Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside episode 375 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitt, and in the heart of enemy territory, downtown Toronto, alongside Brandon Pillar out in Collingwood. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Well, we're happy to have our best friend of the show, Tony Ferrari, to recap the draft. Now it's 2 weeks later and the dust has settled. And Tony's got some life changes going on as well. He's now with Sports Illustrated and the Hockey News. So the clout is skyrocketing, but you know he's still got time for his boys. It's his sixth time on the show, including Christmas Day. So we're extremely happy for Tony and to have Tony back on the show for all of his draft takes. We've also got some Sens news to dive into. The Atlanta Gladiators. How's that for an appropriate affiliation for the Ottawa Senators, the new ECHL team? So we can expect at least a goalie, maybe more. We'll talk about that. And the Senators have added 3 AHL contracts to the books. All that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, August 11th, and Pilsy, the Atlanta Gladiators. That's got a nice ring to it, the newest Ottawa Senators affiliate.
Yeah, I love the announcement. Like, first off, the Gladiators, that goes perfectly with the Senators theme, right? So you got Senators, Gladiators. I love that. Not to take anything away from the Brampton Beast. I also had a soft spot for them as I did a couple of interviews there. I got to watch Marcus Hogberg play. So it's too bad that Atlanta is quite a bit farther from Ottawa than Brampton, but that's a great spot to be. And the Atlanta Gladiators, they were the Boston Bruins ECHL affiliate previously. So they've been in the ECHL and an affiliate before, so they know what they're doing. And not a bad place to be playing hockey in Atlanta, Georgia.
After the interview, we'll touch on who the Belleville Senators have signed. And we discussed on last week's episode when we went through our projected Belleville Sens lineup, like they don't have a bunch of extra bodies themselves, let alone who they can loan down a league. But it seems like Kevin Mandolese at least will start there. And that's a great spot for him. A guy who battled a little inconsistency at the Belleville Senators level. Hell, it's his first pro year. So can you really hold it against him? The year after he was named the Quebec goalie of the year in the QMJHL. So this is a great spot, would you say, for him next year to really hone in on his craft?
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, another take of ours that's old and no longer valid the second we post it, but I said there's no Brampton Beast, so you can't send anyone down to the ECHL. Well, yes, there is no Brampton Beast, but now you can send someone down to the ECHL. And yeah, it was a tough year for Mando, but also, man, look at that Belleville team to start the season. It was a tough year for everyone. So when you're the goalie in that situation, it doesn't make things any easier. So I do anticipate he'll be in the East Coast League. And then if there's any injuries along the way, like even at the NHL level, the shuffling of the cards of the goalies could see Mando be brought back up to Belleville and play in a backup role if need be, which I think as a backup, I think that would be a comfortable role for him as well. But I'd rather have him starting East Coast Hockey League games and get the minutes in for sure.
If he's up and down, he'll have to make sure his car's running smooth. And if that's the case and it's not, he's going to go to rockauto.com. Mando's been a guest of this show. He knows that rockauto.com is a family business that's been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. You know that everyone's selling things online now, but they were ahead of their time and for good reason. They've got amazing products. They have everything you need in a few easy clicks, and it's delivered directly to your door, whether it's an engine control module, a brake part, a tail lamp, a motor oil, or even you can get your new carpet there. The best part I haven't even gotten to yet, and that's the prices at rockauto.com. They're always reliably low, and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. You just have to go check it out. for yourself. That's rockauto.com and see all the parts available for you. All we ask is that you put Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? That way they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. All right, Pillsy. Well, what do you say? Without further ado, let's get to our chat with best friend of the show. It's Tony Ferrari. We're very pleased to welcome our best friend of the show, a man who needs no introduction, but since he's got some exciting things happening in his professional career, we're going to give him one anyways. He is on charge of drafts, prospects with the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. Talk about a brand name guy. Well, he's our best friend of the show as well. Tony Ferrari, welcome back. How are you doing today, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, boys. I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain about life lately. It's been pretty sweet. I'm not gonna lie.
So take us through before we get into the Sens draft and everything. How did this all unfold from leaving Dauber Prospects? You're the head of scouting there, and then this new opportunity. Super exciting.
Yeah. So basically, I made a split decision to leave Dauber Prospects. Just differences in wanting to, the ways we wanted to do things, and it was like, all right, let's see what's going to happen after this. I don't know really where I'm going. And as soon as I announced it, like so many weird offers came in. Not that I was expecting any of them. And yeah, as soon as I seen the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated, I was like, it's going to be pretty sweet seeing my name up on that website. So I think I got to lean there. And yeah, it just worked out great. I'm enjoying myself so far.
Yeah, we didn't think you'd be a free agent for too long, if we're being honest here, Tony. Always coming with the good stats and insights. So my question is, what really changes for you now? Like, what's different in your new role with the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated as opposed to what you're doing at Dauber?
So with Dauber, I was in charge of kind of everything. I was doing the whole managing editor thing, the whole scouting team as well, and I was stretching myself a little thin, to be completely honest. And I love Dauber Prospects. It's a great outlet, especially to start out, but it was kind of at the point where I was ready to take that next step and do something a little bit more professional. And I didn't think it'd necessarily be the Hockey News or Sports Illustrated, but I'm happy to be there because yeah, it's a little bit cushier gig. I'm not going to lie. I have one article a week I have to put out. I still do the scouting and everything, and I'll be helping out with the draft as we get closer to that and stuff. But it's a nice kind of relaxed gig. It's bigger platform, which is awesome. And it, I'm not going to lie, it allows me to use the Hockey News to get interviews with guys like possibly Shane Wright or Brad Lambert. So when I do my game tape series, which I'm still going to be doing this year with the Hockey News now, I'll be able to kind of get those bigger names and not have to dive into the 6th round for a guy to interview. So it'll be nice.
Yeah, we're excited to see what you get up to. So what are you going to be doing a podcast as well? Like kind of how far do your reaches go with your new job?
Well, I'm going to be doing the video series this year on YouTube, and I was debating on releasing it as a podcast, but because we kind of go over game tape and stuff, it's a little bit more visual than necessarily the podcast is worth. But I might release just the interview portion in 10, 15-minute episodes just to kind of get that out there too, right? And more content for people to listen to and whatnot, and that we don't have to watch the full video. But yeah, it's going to be one article a week or more, probably more, let's be honest. And then the video series on YouTube, so it'll be fun.
That's fantastic, and really enjoyed your article on the Slovak team recently. I've got one of my best friends from growing up Slovak, so I was always kind of enamored, and then having Hossa and Chara and the Sens organization, it was easy to fall in love with those types of players. So that was awesome. We're looking forward to your continued work there. Maybe we get a Tony's game tape with Tyler Boucher, basically hit everything. What before we get into where he was taken and everything, what can Sens fans expect with the rambunctious style that he brings game in and game out?
Well, I think that's what you said, right? That he's a rambunctious style. He's going to hit everything. And I think he doesn't get credit for the skill and everything that he does have, because I do think he's got some offensive tools. He's not a guy that's going to dangle a guy like we saw Tim Stützle do numerous times last year, but he's a guy that's going to put his shoulder down, get to the net, make things happen. And he's going to be that really, I love him as a middle 6 option. Like just a guy that's going to bang, crash, play in all situations. I think he can penalty kill. I think he can power play and kind of play a role in any situation. So while I didn't love where he was picked, I did really like the pick in general. Like he's a guy that you look at how the centers like to draft. And that was a guy that I was like, that could be a Sen. And he wound up being there. And man, it was an interesting pick. I loved it.
Did you have any doubt when they said from the U.S. national team, or were you thinking Chaz Lucius as well?
Oh, I was 100% thinking Chaz Lucius.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they're going with the sniper. I love it. And then they went with Tyler Boucher, and I'm like, hold on. Okay, what happened here? Let me think about this for a second. And like I said, I like the player, so I guess I can't really say I hate the pick, but yeah, it was a little high.
Tony, and again, 10th overall pick aside, a third line of Alex Formenton, Ridley Gregg, and Tyler Boucher down the road. Like, good luck playing against those guys.
That'd be so annoying. I'm sure we're going to talk about Ridley Gregg a little bit later, but man, like those two together would be so annoying. And then Formenton's speed, it would just enjoy playing against that team, especially when they dump and chase or do anything, because it's going to be really painful to play against.
And when the most annoying player isn't even mentioned in that sense, it's still Brady, the King Daddy topper of annoying hockey players. When we did our countdown, we had him at 55, and I think that was probably a pretty average place that you could have found him on many boards. And we said poor man's Brady Tkachuk type style. If he gets 8 goals, just like Brady did as a freshman at Boston University, could there be cause for concern? What kind of year do you think he needs to have to supplant or to really, earn that draft spot that he was taken?
I don't think he needs to have like a huge offensive year. I hope he does have more than 8 goals. Like, I'd like to see him get into the double digits, kind of put up a pretty good offensive year. But don't be shocked if he's a guy that gets like 14 goals and 8 assists or something like that. I won't be shocked because his playmaking is a little bit on the lesser side of things, but he does have a really good shot. He has really nice hands around the net. So I could see that goal scoring translating a little bit quicker to the college game, but I think he's going to be a perfectly capable offensive player at the NCAA level. I don't think he's going to have any issues there, especially if he's there a couple years. I could see a big year in year 2, especially.
Now we've seen some camp rosters and some rumors coming out about the World Juniors and who could be on the team, who has a chance, who's been playing well. Do you think Tyler Boucher has a shot at making the U.S. World Junior team?
I don't know if he has a shot to make the team, but I could see them going, you know what, we want a guy that can crash and bang and play a little bit offensively, play that penalty killing role. And if that's a guy that they want, I think there's not many better choices than Tyler Boucher that play that aggressive, just willing to go into every corner style of game that he plays. So I think there's an outside shot, but if I'm making the team up myself, I don't know if he quite makes it.
So if I'm reading this properly, Tony, World Juniors are in Edmonton again this year?
Yeah, they're in Edmonton this year, hopefully this year with fans, but with the numbers going up again, who knows? Right,
but that would be NHL size rink. Maybe that bodes well for him, a guy who, does his work along the wall.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like the NHL size rink definitely kind of bodes well for him because there's less room for you to run away from him when he's trying to come at you. So it's going to be really interesting to see because, like I said, if they do want to go with even if a fourth line of just a couple of guys who can bang, Tyler Boucher is right near the top of that list for me.
Now, selected right after Tyler Boucher was a guy I was really interested in, Cole Sillinger. Now, when you look at Tyler Boucher and the players that were picked around him, where do you think other teams might have been interested in Boucher? Like, we heard there was rumors that maybe the Rangers were looking at him later. Do you think it was kind of a moment where the Sens thought, yeah, there's a lot of talent to be had here, and maybe we're passing up on a bit of talent here, but this is our guy. Like the Sens might have picked him even higher if they had the opportunity. Like, do you think that was just the case of they were fully targeted on him and kind of had the blinders on to anyone else available?
Yeah, honestly, I went into this draft. I think I told you guys even beforehand, like there's going to be a lot of teams that just find the guy they like and they're just stuck on him. I thought every team was going to go, who's the guy that's going to fit in our system? Who's the guy that we like? And doesn't matter if it's anyone else, because this was such a wide open year. Like there were so many different factors that went into it, from COVID to tournaments being canceled to games not being played even at all. So a guy like Tyler Boucher, like I understand why they were enamored with him. He was hurt a little bit last year and didn't get to play the full season, but when he did play, he was really, really good. So as much as I don't love the pick necessarily, I can talk myself into it if I really start to get going and try to convince myself. So it's not.
Well, let's get you going, Tony. Let's go.
It's not completely unrealistic, even though it probably wouldn't have been my pick. But yeah, like I look at guys around him, and I probably would have taken a Cole Sillinger, but higher than him. And like you said, the Rangers were interested in him, and there's rumors anywhere from 15 to 20 that he was going to go. So if that was your guy and you knew he was going to go, then yeah, you take him.
Yeah, well, he's got the bloodlines, which we know the Sens love from last year with Jake Sanderson, Ridley Gregg. The list goes on and on. We've been over it plenty of times, but he also is going to the same school as Brady Tkachuk, which I think makes a little bit of a nice tie-in for Sens fans as well. But that wasn't where the confusion ended when it came to the Sens draft. Day 2, they picked up right where they left back off with Ben Roger. Now, A lot of people had to hit the Google button right away when Ben Rogers' name came out. OHL guy, didn't get to play last year at all, except for they had that little tournament in Erie. Do you think that really cemented his stock? A guy who put on so much weight since his last OHL game.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be that reason. Like the Erie tournament was important for a few players, I think. And you look at other guys like Ty Voigt and a few other OHL guys that didn't get a play. That was their only real play this year. So as limited as it was, as crappy as the video was, like I watched it myself and it was brutal at times. Like they would just fuzz out and you'd be like, I can't tell who the hell anyone is. So it's a tough situation, but I mean, if this is your guy, then you go for it. Like he was a guy that I was trying to figure out where I knew him from, and I was the 2035 season on NHL 21, and that's they created him for me. And it's just like, man, like this was a pick that really confused me. And like you said, the surprises didn't seem to stop with the Senators. They were going for their guys, and even though I don't agree with it, you got to respect it, man. Like they really like to go for their guys.
Yeah, and I mean, Ben Rogers was the second round pick they selected. Before him was Zach Ossipchuk. And you mentioned to us off air that he's a guy that was on your radar, but you were not expecting him to go in the second round. What can you tell us about what you saw about Ossipchuk and what you like from his game?
Well, Ostapchuk he's a really interesting player because, like you said, he was on my radar a bunch this year. I kept every once in a while he'd flash and I'd see something I really like, and then I'd go, all right, well, I'm going to go and watch him. And then I'd dive into him and I'd be like, maybe there's not as much there. And then a couple weeks later, a month later, he'd flash again, and I'd be like, oh, that was really nice, and I want to check him out. And again, it would just the consistency wasn't there, but he's got a ton of skill. He's got size. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. You're not really complaining about the frame or the fundamentals or anything. You're looking at him and going, where is your ceiling? Like, what are you going to be at the next level? Because he's got silky smooth hands. I've seen him make some crazy dekes this year. He's got the ability to get to the net, but he just doesn't do it all the time. And you're like, why? What is going on here? So I think for him, it's going to be a big thing about consistency. A second round's too high, but like I said earlier, this draft was so wild that teams were going all over the board. Like my board was completely ruined. It didn't even look anything like my draft board. And I think every draft analyst this year, like you look at that, whether it was Pronman or Scott Wheeler, or Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects, like anybody that did their own list, it was not even close to what happened. Real life was pretty wild this year.
The token question we have to ask when a centerman gets taken, does he project in the middle, or could we see him at the wing?
No, he's going to be a winger, I think.
Yeah.
There's times where you're wondering about his pace and in the way he's able to kind of push the pace and everything. And I think for a center, especially at the NHL level nowadays, you got to be able to kind of push that pace and really drive play. And he doesn't really do that. He's a fun player to toss on the wing of a guy that can really drive a line, but I don't know if he's a guy that I'm looking at and going, that's a center down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's the theme for a lot of young prospects. So we'll see how it goes with them. But either way, I'm excited about Ostapchuk as a player. Now, you talked about draft boards and rankings being busted. When we had you on last time, we talked a bunch about Aatu Räty, and the Senators passed on him 4 times, really, if you think about it. At 10th overall, at 39th overall, at 42, they traded back to 49. And then at 49, he was still there. I must have had Aatu Räty as the guy to be selected for like 25 picks. I was like, all right, he's got to go now. The New York Islanders, they might get the steal of the draft. Their very first selection at 52nd overall is a guy that a lot of prospects, scouts, and reporters had ranked first overall a couple years ago. What happened that he fell so far down the draft board? And then, of course, he sticks it to all the GMs and head scouts by scoring 4 goals the next day.
I love that he scored the 4 goals the next day because I was complaining about him falling all day long. It was honestly annoying. Like, it doesn't make sense to me why he'd fall so far. But if I have to put reasons on it, he did have a bad draft year. There's no getting around that. His draft year was super inconsistent. He was on the World Junior team in his draft -1 season. Then his draft year, he was left off because he just wasn't performing at the league level. And honestly, he seemed like a guy that was rushed to the league level, performed well at first, and then kind of the league caught up to him. And then he wasn't able to kind of maintain it and kind of improve. And we saw that this year and last year. In that 16-year-old year that you mentioned a couple of years ago, really kind of put him on the map. Everyone was super high on him. And then he had the draft -1 year was good, not great. And everyone was like, oh, well, he's still this guy that we see. And I think there's still so much there to like. I think he's still a middle 6 center. His transition game is phenomenal. I think that's what you're banking on with him. I think he is a center at the next level. I don't think there's any chance he's on the wing because he does control play and push play up ice so well. I still think he's got a great wrist shot. I mean, we saw it at the Summer Showcase where he's, like you said, he scored 4 goals. He finished with a bunch of points. Like, he was just a dominant player at that tournament. And so I think the Islanders went, oh, we don't have a first round pick, but we got a first round player here. So I think the Islanders are laughing, and I think there's going to be a lot of teams that regret it because, like you said, the Senators passed over him 4 times. Detroit passed him over him 4 or 5 times, I think. Like, there was a lot of teams passing on him. So someone's gonna be hurting when he scores a bunch of goals in the playoffs against them or something.
Oh man, and I even saw a quote, I can't remember where, I'd give it credit, where a pro scout just said we didn't even have him on our list, just completely avoided it. So I think that it's already a head scratcher, and old takes exposed come quickly on draft night, but that one seems like just a head scratcher for sure. Before we get back to Sen's picks and Oliver Johansson, Carson Latimer, and Chandler Romeo, the 3 left that we haven't discussed at all, goalie friendly show, and your guy Jesper Wallstedt doesn't go until 20. What's more shocking to you, that he fell that far, or that a team who's been looking for a goalie since when? Since Dwayne Rollison in 06? Like, the Oilers haven't had anyone to rely on between the pipes since then. They trade away the pick when they're on the clock.
Oh, the Oilers are going to oil, and it's so beautiful. I love it. I don't know why I hate the Oilers so much. They're just so annoying. I love Connor McDavid. I want him to do so well, just anywhere else, please.
And Cody Ceci.
Yeah, and I mean, my boy Cody Ceci, the 3-year deal is going to go great. Whatever. But no, I think the Oilers did exactly what the Oilers always do. They kind of make a goofy decision. You don't know why they did it, and then they kind of get burned, and you look back in hindsight and go, man, like, it would have been nice if the Oilers had a goalie now. And Jesper Wallstedt goes at 21. There's been a lot of random rumors, so I don't want to kind of go out and say anything, but I think teams are going to regret it. Like, this guy is almost NHL ready now, and their concerns, oh, maybe he's too refined already. Okay, like, is that a problem? If he's going to come into the NHL and be a starter within 2 years, I think you're laughing at that point. Like, that's not something to complain about. Sebastian Costa has a ton of upside. I love the kid. He's got a ton of size, ton of skill. He's going to be a really good goalie as well. I still had Jesper Wallstedt ahead of him, but I'm not shocked Costa went ahead of him. But it's one of those things where Minnesota got a really nice pick at 21, and I think they're going to laugh. And as we mentioned, the Oilers are going to look back and play Minnesota a bunch in the Western Conference, and they're probably going to regret it because they're going to get shut out a bunch of times by Jesper Wallstedt. So I'll enjoy that.
Yeah, that'll be fun for sure. Now, before we get to Sen's draft picks, like Ross said, there's one more kind of shock, and a guy that we talked about last time a lot as well. How surprised were you when the Anaheim Ducks selected Mason McTavish at 3rd overall? I think pretty much everyone had William Eklund going there, right? Like, he was kind of their guy. And then when they selected McTavish, I think a lot of people were surprised, but then it doesn't take you long to be like, well, actually, that's a really good pick. Like, maybe it was a little rich for some people's blood at 3rd overall, but that's one hell of a player they picked up.
Man, he was maybe my biggest riser all year, so I was perfectly fine with it. It was one of those things that, similar to the Mort Seider pick for me, which I always claim a bunch of fame to because I had him higher than most people, but whatever, it's just me. But no, like, Mason McTavish, I think it was a guy that was rising all year for me. And I said with Mort Seider back then, I'm like, he could go higher than in the top 10. I think he can go high. And I said that with Mason McTavish. I think at the end of the year, he was right around the 10 mark. And I mean, I said it in this blurb, if I'm not mistaken, like, I could see this guy going top 5 because the physicality, the skating improvement, there was so much gains throughout the year with him that there was no reason to think that those gains were going to stop going through the summer and going into next season. I think this kid's trajectory is sky high right now. And I think Anaheim got a really good player. I think William Eklund was still a guy I'd probably take ahead, but it's really easy to convince me that you want Mason McTavish instead with that one.
Made me feel really good that he went at 3, because if he went to LA or Arizona ultimately at 9, if it was that close but that far, I would have been really hurt. But it's one of those, you get him out of the way early and you just kind of give some stick taps, because that's incredible. Although without the goalie going in the top 9, we knew there was a top 9 skater, and no surprises there, but why would there be? How far? And yes, leading question, because the Sens got the 10th pick, which was so off the board. But how far was the difference between the top 9 skaters and whoever you had at 10?
I mean, in this draft, I thought it was a fairly significant margin, but Fabien Lysell went at 21. Like,
right.
There were guys that were falling out of the top 10, and I'm not quite shocked by it because there were reasons for them. And I think I said that all year, is like, every player in this draft had like a red flag. It seemed like there was something obvious that was like a drawback in their game. So it was just what were teams going to let fall? And Jesper Wallstedt, Fabian Lysell, those were guys that fell. And we're looking at Mason McTavish, who goes up super high. So this is going to be my favorite draft to look back on in 5 years and go, let's see who just did okay. Like, I just want to see who did okay.
Yeah, and this is going to be the craziest draft to follow because there's been so little intel. Like you said, a lot of guys not getting games. Blurry video is your only thing you can rely on for some guys. So it's going to be fun to look back for sure. Now, getting back to the Sens draft. So obviously the Sens, they've got a type and they stuck to that type for the first 3 picks, and that's size. They went size, size, size. Then, with their 3rd round pick in Oliver Johansson, they went for someone a little more skilled. Now, we didn't really know much about Oliver Johansson ourselves, but after doing some research, it seems like this is a kid with some nice upside, and he can put the puck in the back of the net. What do you think about him, Tony?
I like the pick. This is one of the picks of the Sens. This is probably my favorite pick for where they got the player. It is probably a little higher than where I'd have taken him, but I like the pick because he's skilled forward. He's got some silky smooth hands. Like, he's got the ability to put the puck in the back of the net, like you said, and he's a good skater. I think anytime you get a good skater that can shoot or make a lot of high end plays, that's a player you want to take in this range. And Oliver Johansson, he's a little weak and a little soft, but he's going to need to bulk up. But he's playing against men at times. He's doing a lot well, and you're going to see him in the Allsvenskan a lot this year probably. So you're going to see him playing against men more often and playing against higher competition. And then you're really going to get to see where that skill can take him, because he's going to go as high as his skill takes him. And he's never going to be that guy that the Senators love, who's going to bang and crash in the corners, but he's going to be the guy out front that dangles the dude and puts the puck in the back of the net when a guy like Tyler Boucher goes in there and gets it for him. It's going to be really fun to watch him add a skill element to this prospect pool.
Maybe this is just my simple brain talking, but with that description you just said, out of Teamra, I'm getting flashbacks from when the Sens took Jonathan Dahlen. Do you see a little bit of similarity in the style of player there?
Yeah, I could definitely see a similar player there, where like we're looking at Jonathan Dahlen's career right now, and it hasn't really gone the way we all kind of expected it. But
Tony, you should have seen my meltdown when Ottawa traded him for Alex Burrows. Full on meltdown.
I know, it was such a goofy, like I wasn't a fan of the trade either, but you look at it now and you're like, man, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think Oliver Johansson's going to be a guy that maybe can do what Dahlen didn't and get to the NHL level and be more consistent. So I like the pick. And like I said, it's certainly not a bad spot to take him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna hop in there and just say that when it comes to guys in Teamra, it seems like, you play on a good team, and the Sens had another guy in Victor Lodin there. I think that him getting another opportunity next year, but no chance he's on World Junior radar, eh, Tony?
Maybe a slight chance, but I probably wouldn't bank on it by any means. Maybe not this year.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sens fans are just going to have to be happy enough having the returnees for the States, at least with Jake Sanderson, Tyler Clevin doing their thing down there. And would you say Sanderson gets to see at that tournament for them?
I see no one else really getting it. Like,
yeah.
I've said for a long time that I could see Sanderson being a captain at the NHL level if Brady wasn't Brady, and I could see him being it pretty early on in his career. But I think he's going to be a guy that wears a letter in the NHL pretty soon. And man, I love Jake Sanderson.
I know.
I was so happy that he's been doing so well, and I'm just like I'm jacked to see him eventually get to the NHL level. Maybe at the end of the season, we'll see.
I think that's when I was sold on Tyler Boucher, when obviously they were at the World Junior Summer Showcase, and he got the big hug from Jake Sanderson right away. I was like, all right, if Sanderson's in, I'm in. And then you hear that Brady Tkachuk texted DJ Smith being like, that's our kind of guy. That just gives you, that sense of camaraderie and teamwork that you need when you want to build a championship organization. But you need depth pieces as well. And I think that's what the Sens were looking for in the 4th and the 7th round with their final 2 picks. But this Carson Latimer seems like he's got a separating skill, and his speed, he seems to get around the ice pretty well, hey?
Yeah, he's a quick kid, and honestly, I didn't watch a ton of him. And when he was drafted, I was like, all right, I got to go back and at least see who this guy is and make sure I know what player this is. And yeah, he's got a ton of speed. He's got a ton of ability to get moving around the ice. He played at the PJHL level at times last year, which is Pacific Junior Hockey League, and I think he was one of the first players taken from that league, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think so. But it's going to be really interesting because he does have that one standout skill, and you're like, what else is going to come from his game? Because if he can add an offensive element, maybe he doesn't have to play on a third and fourth line, or maybe he doesn't get that offensive element, but that speed makes him a really valuable asset on a fourth line and a penalty kill. So I think he's a guy that definitely has that could have an NHL future, but it's just going to be about figuring out what else he can bring to the table other than that speed.
Yeah, from kind of what I've gathered about him, he's really good at retrieving pucks. He's good in close to the net, and honestly, he's got a bit of a flair for the dramatic too. He scored a goal in his first WHL game and his first WHL shift. So, I mean, not that means too much, and when you're heading down the road, but you love to see someone that can hop into a new competition level and just light it up like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And anytime you have that speed, I think we've seen it with Alex Formenton. That speed can be a huge difference maker and get you a bunch of opportunities. And the more opportunities you get, the better you're going to get at finishing them. So if he can start doing that at the WHL this year and kind of get going, really pushing that pace, using that speed as a weapon, then maybe he develops that offensive side of the game that makes him a valuable third line guy that can chip in offensively.
Chandler Romeo. That's about as much as I know about the kid. You?
Yeah, guy. So
big defenseman. That's
yeah, he's another one of those guys that you get created for you in NHL 21 when he's in like 2035 in franchise mode, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'll take this guy in the third round or something. And then Sens got him in the seventh. So look at that. You're doing better than the video game.
No, it's like when you're in creation zone and you just put all the way height on high, and you're like, I'm just gonna have the biggest dude out there, aggression 99. But I guess we'll see, because he hasn't played against very good competition yet. Going to play in the OHL next year, so probably a more sheltered role. But I want to get back into the other big defenseman, Ben Roger. I'm just curious what kind of role you think he'll have in London. We know they're a team that doesn't often play their 16, 17-year-olds, but now with that 17-year-old season washed, poof, vamoose right into thin air, is he going to be able to get an opportunity to play top four on that team?
I don't know if he gets to play top four. That's a really strong team. I could see him getting in there because he will bring a defensive element to the game. And if they need to balance pairings, maybe he gets it kind of up there. But I see him playing a big role in the penalty kill. And like I said, it's going to be, all right, where can we get that upside? Where is that offensive game at? And if he can show any kind of inkling of being able to move the puck efficiently and contributing a little bit, either as a passer or just a big shot at the other end of the ice, which he does have a big shot when he can get it off, then maybe he does get that top four opportunity. So I think he's going to be one of those guys that's definitely going to be in the running for that 3, 4, 5, 6 spot, kind of like he's going to be in that bottom four, but I don't know where. And yeah, without that season last year, it's tough to really project this year, exact pairings and everything, because maybe a guy didn't take a year off very seriously and another guy did, and Ben Roger takes his spot. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see where he ends up.
Yeah, I'm going to be following along with the London Knights for sure this season. And like right away, great spot to have a guy develop is the London Knights. So right away, I don't mind that at all. That's a good start. So now last question for me, Tony. Thanks again for joining us. You're a draft analyst, and I hate to do this to you, but looking at how the Sens were graded by many draft analysts, it was F, and F, I think, were the only reviews I saw. If you had to do the grading system, and you don't have to get too in depth about it, but where would you put them based on also knowing that they have a type and Trent Mann has his principles and things that he looked for, and you can see the success of that in some of the players that are already coming along in the system. How would you grade the Sens based on the way they typically draft here?
Based on the way they typically draft, they get like a C or something, because the draft always confuses me a little bit. They always
C for confusing. Yeah, there you go.
They always do something that confuses me, and I'll give him a C to be nice. But like I said, I like Tyler Boucher. I like Zach Ostapchuk. Like they're players they drafted I like. It's just like I would have waited a little bit probably to draft those guys, and that's really my biggest thing. But I do like the Tyler Boucher pick. Maybe I would have liked him in the second round better or late in the first, but like what you said, we've heard that other teams were looking for him in the late teens, so they didn't really have a chance to wait. So get your guy, do your thing. The Ottawa Senators always do their things. So like I said, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I got to respect it.
Yeah, no question. Well, hey, Trent Mann was admittedly saying that he wouldn't have taken those swings if it was his first draft, but I think that it puffed his chest out a little bit when he found Drake Batherson in the 4th round. And then the way Pinto's been developing out of the 2nd round, trading up for Mad Sogard, guy goes 7-0 to start in North America. I think he's walking around a little bit taller than he would have been in his first draft. So I'm willing to stick with the mantra and Trent we trust, and until he really, takes a seat. And I didn't even mention Brady Tkachuk and the pushback from that 4th overall pick that really started this whole rebuild. But you can't just draft top 6 forwards, Tony, and top 6 looking pretty full with guys under 23. I say almost tongue in cheek, but that Norris and Batherson and Tkachuk line was just awesome this year. So my final question to you is, in terms of the Sens prospect pool, and it's kind of hard to figure it out, right? Because where do you cut off the games played? Is it under 23 years old, or is it a certain amount of NHL experience? But where do you think Tyler Boucher will slot in the top prospect list that we're bound to see come out?
It's going to be interesting because if you like, the way I kind of look at it is I just go, have they established themselves at the NHL level? So I look at a guy like Eric Brännström and I go, that's kind of a prospect still. Like, as much as he's not like he's in the NHL, he's should be in the NHL this year. He's still a prospect to me, I think. And I look at Tyler Boucher and I go, Jake Sanderson's clearly above him. Eric Brännström has some upside, but where do you like to slot him? I love Philip Gustafsson. You guys have known I've been on Philip Gustafsson's train for 3 years now, and that's
thanks for saying train and not bus.
Yeah, Jesus. I had to. I'm sorry. I couldn't do the Gus bus thing.
No, we hate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not for that.
And actually, a little sneak preview. We had Joey DeCord on. He hates Gus the bus too. So, sorry, I should clarify. He likes him as a person because there's we got to clarify that for sure. But he's against the nickname.
Joey DeCord, nicest person ever. Also a jerk.
Yeah, just pouring salt and pouring gasoline and lighting on fire on the way
on his way out.
So,
yeah.
No, but okay. Well, the last guy I'll say, and I think that these might be comparable. You mentioned you wanted to chat about him as well as Ridley Gregg. Like those two guys, you think they're comparable level prospects, or does Boucher have a bit more offensive skill?
Yeah, I think I have Boucher ahead of him actually one exact spot when I kind of quickly did a top 10 list here. Yep. And they're at 5 and 6. I have Sanderson, Brännström, Gustafsson, and Bernard Docker ahead of him clearly. Okay. And then there's kind of a mash. I just have everyone else that I'm like, I want them all to be 5 because like Lassie Thompson, Igor Sokolov, like I love the kid, like Alex Formenton, Ridley Gregg, like all those guys to me are like Lassie Thompson, kind of in the same boat where you don't really have a distinguishing factor between them. So you're kind of all just filling out the back end of the top 10. I think any one of them could be argued even higher. Like the Senators prospect pool, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting in the league because their top guys are now in the NHL. You look at Norris, those guys, and really Jake Sanderson's the one standout dude that's not in the NHL yet. So you're looking at Shane Pinto, who's ahead of those guys, who I completely forgot about actually. Sorry, that was so rude. He's so good.
He's basically an NHLer.
Exactly. Right. So you're looking at this team and you're like, which guys are going to be in the NHL this year? Which guys are you expecting to make a big impact? And how quickly are they going to do it? Because this is a prospect pool that's a lot of not necessarily the same player, but the same level of prospect. It's really interesting because it's deep and it's not necessarily any high end guys because, like I said, those guys are at the NHL level aside from Sanderson, really.
Okay, so we're gonna ask one final question, just because you're best friend of the show, Tony. We appreciate your time. Now a member of the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. That just sounds awesome to say, man. And we really are not only impressed, but stoked that we get to continue reading your work. So Robbie Yarventi, should we be worried about this guy at all? I need a little update because a lot of people saw him struggle at the World Junior level and then kind of an up and down season over in Finland. He comes over, looks okay in the AHL in a small sample size, but it seems to me out of all the picks in that draft that the analysts thought it was the best one, but then he's kind of regressed, whereas you see a guy like Klevin and Sokolov, guys taken just behind him, maybe improve in the eyes of the experts.
I still have faith in Yarventi. I think he's still got stuff to work on. Like that was the thing coming out. He had that big shot. He had that offensive game that you love, but then there were holes and there were lots of holes. And I still think he needs to fill those holes, but you're still looking at him and go, man, like if you can get this guy to just skate a little bit more and pick up his feet. Cause when he gets skating, he's not bad. It's just, he doesn't like doing it. So he doesn't. So you need him to kind of move his feet a bit more. But I think if he does that, I think he's still an effective scorer at the NHL level. He may not be the best two-way guy, or he's not going to be a guy that's really going to be on your penalty kill or anything, but you toss him on the third line as a scorer, you toss him on the second line as a complementary piece, and then you put him on the power play, and I think you still have a valuable player.
Yeah, we'll see with that. You know what else we'll see is what your top 10 cents prospects are next time we have you on the show. We'll give you some time to prepare. We'll get these guys back on the ice first. And then right when the season starts, Tony, we'd love to have you back on. As always, I mean, you're the most often recurring guest in Locked On Senators history, and now making your YouTube debut. We absolutely love to see that, Tony. So thanks so much for taking the time with us. We always appreciate your insight.
No problem, guys. Anytime. You know it.
Stick taps to Tony for joining us. Really appreciate him, and best of luck to him in the future, especially with the Hockey News Sports Illustrated. That's pretty exciting for our boy, eh?
Oh, yeah. What a massive move. And even he mentions in the interview, like, it's kind of scary when you decide, all right, I'm kind of at a crossroads here with Dobber prospects. I'm just going to leave and fingers crossed, hope for the best. And doesn't get much better than an offer from Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. So we're stoked for Tony. That's a guy who works his tail off, and he deserves everything that he's coming his way. Yeah.
You know why he's able to work so hard for so long, Pilsy?
He's got good energy.
Why does he have that?
Well, he knows. Tony's a listener of the show. He knows he's got to follow along with Built Bar. And the thing is, if you want a protein bar that is going to give you the health benefits, but also it's not something that you're regretting eating. You're not like, oh man, I know this is good for me, but it doesn't taste good. No, get that garbage out of here. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. There's so many good flavors to choose from, and it's great for the health-conscious guy or girl. You can lose or maintain weight while indulging in a delicious treat. I'm still working away at my mix box, and there's so many good flavors. I told you guys all about the Rocky Road flavor. Hopefully you got into that, but today I'm going to profile the flavor that I had while getting ready for Tony's interview, and that's strawberry. It's a hot summer day. Get some nice, cool strawberry flavor with the chocolate. Like, if you guys like chocolate fountains and dipping strawberries in there, then this is a scent. It's amazing. Yeah, who doesn't like that? So it's basically the same thing, but you're not feeling so guilty after because you got 17 grams of protein in there, only 140 calories, Ross, and only 5 grams of sugar. So that is a delicious treat that all our listeners can enjoy, and you're going to enjoy it a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit sweeter when you get a discount, and we're hooking you up with a discount, of course. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Guys, BuiltBar.com. Check out the website. They have such a good website, easy to navigate, so many good products. Get your 15% off from us. You're welcome. Promo code LOCK15. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
And let us know on Twitter at SendCentral when you get your shipment. We love hearing all of the great stories when it comes to Built Bar. It was Alicia Desmier that mentioned she got her box of, I'm just pulling it up right now, Rocky Road. Are you
Went
kidding
for the Rocky
me?
Road. Nice.
Delicious. So, Alicia, we want you to enjoy that, and stay tuned because you're coming up as a Send Central citizen in a few weeks if you're up for it. So the challenge is in your court. Now, let's tell you about our friends at BetOnline. I'll bet that Alicia is going to join us as a Send Central citizen. I wish I could get the odds at BetOnline, but I can get pretty much every other odd. I was all over the Olympics at BetOnline. I was also sprinkling on the Blue Jays on their homestand. They end that 9 wins, 2 losses. And if you don't think that last night I was against them traveling west with the time change, you got to keep that in mind when you're going in baseball and when the starting pitchers, all that. So it's not hockey season. We don't have Pilsy's parlay. You can't fade them, but I'm on fire right now. So follow me. It'll be all right. And then where do I do my wagering? Responsibly, of course. It's betonline.ag. Now, they want you to join them. It's the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. So you know that we trust them, and they trust us enough to give us a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So when you put in the promo code LOCKED15, when you put in the promo code LOCKED ON, you'll get a 50% welcome bonus. If you bid in $200, that is $100 right there for you. If you put in 100, that's 50 free play dollars. You got to bet it to win it, to earn it, but we know you can. The key is that you're in the action, so don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get into the action, and it's Locked On. Promo code Locked On gets you a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Pillsy. So we had a great chat about the draft with Tony Ferrari. Coming up on Friday's show, Joey Daccord, Seattle Kraken goalie. Amazing chat with him. We just finished recording it late last night, and you get a sneak peek of his Seattle Kraken helmet. Just another reason why you should subscribe on YouTube. You can also download the podcast wherever you download yours, whether it's the Odyssey app, Google Play, Spotify, or on Apple Podcasts. Pillsy, what do you give Joey's helmet from what we've seen out of 5 stars?
5, honestly. Like that, maybe that's a little aggressive, but man, this is why we got on YouTube, guys. The podcast form doesn't work out that great doing sneak previews of helmets and gear.
It's not because of you and I?
Yeah, well, hey, we've both cleaned up a little, so our faces for podcasts and faces for radio are looking a little better these days.
Well, I mean, and not to isolate people who are just listening to the show, but as we've been pointing out, I'm in the middle of the move, so right now my background could be better, but stay tuned. Studios
could be worse.
I've got the same frame. Pillsy and I actually bought the frame that's behind him with the Dominic Hasek jersey. I have the exact same one, and I have a jersey of another Hall of Fame goalie. So we're each going to have a Sens jersey in the background, but also a Hall of Fame goalie that isn't a former Senator. So that in itself is goalie friendly show certified. So you are absolutely credible to give your 5-star review of Joey's helmet. It's a little better than he gave us for the Great Dane nickname, although I do think he liked it.
Yeah, I think everybody likes the Great Dane nickname, but we won't get too much into the Joey Daccord interview because we're going to tease that for next episode, but man, it just makes me even more sad that this guy's gone. Like, what a gem of not even just a goalie, but just a human being. He's a good guy. He's always candid. He's someone that kind of has his eye on maybe doing something in a broadcasting career when he's done playing hockey, which he's got a long career ahead of him, so that won't be anytime soon. But he always likes interviewing us. We always love chatting with him, and it was a bittersweet moment. It's kind of a sad farewell, but we're happy to have him have a great opportunity over in Seattle.
Stay tuned for that on Friday. Pillsy, you said that backwards. You said that he interviewed us, but he pretty much did, because after we stopped the interview, we chatted with him for about a half hour beyond that. So absolute beauty. We're going to be cheering for him. Hashtag Sens Abroad going forward. No question. But his former team, the Belleville Senators, Pillsy, great to see them continuing to add veteran presences to their team. Now, we'll start with Colby Williams because he was on the team this past year, more or less. And I know he's left shot, Jordan Murray was right shot, but more or less the Jordan Murray replacement in Belleville. Now, I think I flipped that. It's Colby Williams, a right shot defenseman, and Jordan Murray was left. That's just semantics. But in terms of a presence on the blue line, Williams just it. And he's got that comfort level, having played for Troy Mann and Hershey as well. So great to see him back in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Ross, a take of ours that is proven right quickly instead of wrong. Like, look at us go, man. But yeah, we did say Belleville wasn't going to be done. And then sure enough, they shored up with 3 new players. Well, a recurring player in Colby Williams. But yeah, he was a 6th-round draft pick by the Washington Capitals in 2015. He's going to provide some leadership and steadiness on the back end, a good right-hand shot defenseman. He had 3 goals, 7 assists in 27 games last season in Belleville. And I thought he was a really slow starter in Belleville because he was one of those guys that was brought in at a weird time. And let's be honest, kind of out of necessity when their roster was looking very, very thin. But then he picked it up probably with some familiarity and with other guys moving on and getting better opportunities. So I think he's the type of guy, you got to have these guys in your system. You need the depth pieces. You need guys who have AHL experience. So great to have Colby Williams back.
I'm going to go out with another take, Pillsy, because right now we're on a heater. I say that he takes Hubert Labrise A. I think he's going to wear an A this year for the team.
Yeah, I could see that. And especially Troy Mann, he had a lot of good things to say about him. He said the assistant coaches down in Belleville really like him and they lean on him a lot as well. So I would be, I'll echo that. I think definitely we could see him wearing an A.
And for the people who are smashing their steering wheel saying, no, why isn't this top prospect going to wear a letter instead? You want guys who are going to be there for the whole season. So that's why I think Colby Williams has a good shot. And they signed 3 guys. So Colby Williams, they signed as a defenseman. He's not the only defenseman that they added. They added Zach Leslie, who people in the Ottawa area might be more familiar with. He's born and raised Ottawa boy, grew up playing for the Gloucester Rangers in minor hockey and then in junior A as well before a 4-year career at the Guelph Storm, your stomping grounds for the OHL. And he's been an AHL guy ever since, making it to the Calder Cup final with the Chicago Wolves in 2018-2019. So he's just going to bring a steady veteran presence to the back end, much like Colby Williams. And then Pilsy, Tyrell Goulburn is your Darren Archibald replacement. This guy's got 11 NHL games under his belt, but if you look at the penalty minutes and his games played in the American League, you can see that he is there to quote our good old buddy Scott Sabourin, to protect the Senators' investments in their prospects.
Yeah, and he's someone who he spent time in my WHL stomping grounds with the Kelowna Rockets. So these are 2 guys that I can definitely get behind and support. But let's start with Zach Leslie before we move on to Tyrell. And he was a 6th-round pick by the Kings in 2013. So yeah, he's been in the system a while. He actually put up a lot of points for the Storm from 2011 to 2015. He's got 6 AHL seasons under his belt. And his highest point total was 28 points in 50 games with the Stockton Heat. And then last season, he had 10 points in 30 games. So he's someone that Troy Mann said that when they were playing the Stockton Heat, he really noticed. So that's a kind of guy where you're like, man, it's tough to game plan against him. So why don't we bring him on our squad? So that's definitely what happened there. And then with Tyrell Goulburn, very interesting player because he doesn't really light it up point-wise, which is why he's protecting the investments. But Ross, he's a guy that's 5'11", 180 pounds, so not exactly a towering enforcer. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. And he does have 11 games in the NHL, no points though, and he really hasn't been able to produce at the AHL level. Like his highest point total was 19 points in 63 games in 2017-2018. So he's not going to be lighting the lamp, but he's definitely going to be a depth guy that Troy Mann can rely on and that the younger prospects can look to for some veteran leadership.
He might be small, but he's not scared. If you go to his hockeyfights.com, he got in a tilt 2 years ago with Josh Brown when he was with
nice
field with Florida's affiliate. So he's not afraid to punch up from his weight class. That being said, it's great to see Belleville filling out their roster. It all means that Senators hockey is returning soon, but that doesn't mean the content stops. Joey DeCourt on Friday. Really fun week ahead next, and we're getting that much closer. And we just hope that we're making it a little bit better to be a Sens fan. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll chat on Friday. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.